Hi everyone, I hope you're well. So today I want to talk about my yearly favorites for 2021, and I have several different categories. Some of them are products and some of them are media or things like that. So first I want to talk about skincare, and the first that I want to mention is the Good Molecules BHA Clarify Gel Cream. So this one is a BHA cream, as it says, and it's meant to dry out acne, things like that, in order to make it go away faster. And I find that that basically is what this does on me. I don't really struggle that much with overall acne. I do have a few spots where it tends to pop out more. I do mostly have it here in the T-zone, I guess it's called, and I find that this does make it dry out and go away faster than if I were to just use nothing. Salicylic acid is actually very well known for that purpose. Of course, I think it's also the main component in aspirin. So some people used to DIY sort of acne masks with aspirin. I remember that when I was like a tween and stuff like that, some people on the internet were saying to put aspirin, to ground up aspirin and put it on your spots and stuff like that. But of course there are products that you can use instead of doing that. Another one is the Yes I Am toner by Jumiso. This is a Korean beauty skincare brand. This is an AHA toner, and I mostly bought it because I often get some drier patches, especially kind of here on the cheeks and kind of here at the very bottom of my nose. I get some drier patches and I can't use this every day. I don't think you're supposed to use this every day. I use it maybe once a week or so when I notice some dry skin around there, and it's not like an immediate result thing, but I have noticed that it feels much smoother on those areas that I apply this on. The more I use it, of course. The first weeks it didn't really feel like it made much of a difference, but now I definitely feel that there is a difference in the feeling of dryness on the skin, on the face where I had applied this. I want to go on Haircare now, and my main favorite I would say is the Superfoods Shea Butter Vitamin B6 Argan Oil Leave-In Hair Serum. I tend to prefer leave-in conditioners whenever I can find them, because I prefer something that you can just leave on your hair instead of like having to, wash it off. When you wash it off, I feel like it does kind of contribute to frizz a little bit. As you can see, my hair isn't quite very frizzy, but that's mostly because I just drench it a lot in like a leave-in conditioner. The downside is that if you apply too much, it kind of does feel a little bit dirty and kind of oily if you over apply. It works really well to smooth and to prevent frizz and tame it when it does happen, of course. It's better to use it on damp hair, but I sometimes use it on dry hair that's a little frizzy, and it works just as well. I think the reason for that might be because it is more likely to feel kind of dirty or overdone if you put it on dry hair, I guess, but I'm not sure about that. By the way, this is by Petal Fresh. I don't think I said that because it appears as if Superfoods is the name of the brand, but it's not. And also this one has a pretty nice smell. It has a slightly kind of vanilla sweet smell. I bought another one at some other point, which is this Schwarzkopf Smooth Shine. This one has basically the same ingredients, except it smells horrible. It smells kind of like artificial strawberry or something like that, and I don't like that smell at all. I can't stand it, like it's really horrible. So last thing for hair care is the Garnier Fructis Hair Food Cocoa. This, if you saw my video of me bleaching my hair and all that, I use this over and over. I've gone through probably 4 of these at this point, because they immediately just feel so moisturizing to the hair. Like whenever my hair felt really dry as I washed it, this immediately, as soon as I put it on, it immediately removed that sensation, and it felt much better. My hair felt much better after that. I also tried the Hair Food Banana version, and this one smells really not much better than this. I really love the smell of the cocoa one. It's very nice. the scents are supposed to do different things, but this is for damaged hair and this is for weak hair, and that's kind of basically the same thing from what I know. I'm not sure, but I mostly bought this to try the scent, and it's a little bit, it's good, but I kind of do prefer this one. The scent of this is delicious. So for nails, I don't have a favorite nail polish. I haven't used that much nail polish this last year, but I have the Orly nail lacquer thinner, and this is meant to revive the polishes that have sort of dried out and become more thicker or more viscous, you know. So for example, you have something like this, and over time the agents that make it a nice not too thin, not too thick formula, they kind of evaporate and it becomes much thicker over time, and you have to basically add in those ingredients into the formula in order to revive it so that it's easier to use again. This was around $5.50, equivalent to $5.50, so it's around the same price of a nail polish, and it's definitely worth it if you have a lot of them, because you're going to use this. If you have nail polish, if you even own a little bit of nail polishes or a few of them, you will probably need this at some point. So I do recommend this one, especially. It says to use like 3 drops or 1 or 2 drops, and I had to use like 5 of them to really get the formula to what I wanted it to be. I think maybe that's because they were very old, so maybe 1 or 2 drops is for maintenance and more are if you really need to revive like really old polishes. But I don't know, the point is it works really well, and I don't find that it affects the pigmentation of the formula. Like, it doesn't make it any less pigmented than it was before or anything. So for makeup products, I do have a few to mention. One that I have talked about before is the Hair in Make Volume and Curl Mascara by Isehan Japan or Kiss Me. I have said it before, but it's one of the few mascaras that I have tried that don't smudge on my lower lash line. I do have a little bit of shadow, darker shadow on my lower lash line, but that has nothing to do, or rather on my under eyes, but that has nothing to do with this mascara. It really holds the curl, and it's also not too difficult to use. I used to, or at least I think I misspoke in a video and I said that this was not waterproof, but I think it's listed as waterproof when you buy it, but it doesn't say in the packaging, or at least not in the actual tube that it says that it's waterproof, but it pretty much behaves like a waterproof, so it's not too difficult to remove. I simply can remove it with some micellar water, and it, like I said, usually waterproof mascaras are good at holding a curl, and this is really good for that as well, like I said. So it's pretty much all that I want in one mascara. It took me a very long time to find one that didn't smudge on my lower lash line, because it really felt like I was the only person who was experiencing that problem and who couldn't find any mascara, even like regular waterproof ones that you get at the drugstore. They didn't work for that either. And this one I do have to buy online, unfortunately, but it's worth it because it's just such a good product. And it's not expensive either. It's like maybe $10 or something like that. So it's kind of between the price of a drugstore mascara and a high-end one, I guess. So one of my favorite products of the year, or my most worn ones, not exactly a product itself, but more of an eyeshadow shade, is the shade Corazon in the Muerte palette, as you can see. So it's this one, this, and the one right next to it. Those are definitely among my most worn ones. Let me see if I can try to show you the dent that I have. I think you can see the dent that I have on this one. It's pretty deep. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but I have definitely gotten a lot of use out of that one, and it's very flattering on my eyes. Another favorite is from the Pro Pigment palette. This is by Profusion, and it's definitely one of the cheapest shadow palettes that you can get at drugstore for this good of a quality. I'm really into pretty much all of the shades. I think all of the shades, at least the ones that I have tried, are very good quality. The ones I haven't tried are mostly kind of more, they look kind of like pressed glitter or something like that. I'm not sure if they are or not, but I don't really like pressed glitter, so I would rather not even touch them. My favorite shade is definitely this one, Disco. That I tend to work with this one, Pop, which is a light shimmery pink. Both are pretty cool toned, as you can see. This one Jive is kind of warmer by in comparison. I also really like Fling and Bestie as like everyday neutral shades. I'm actually wearing this one right now on my crease with a little bit of Fling as a transition shade. I really like especially the pink look that I can make with those shades that I mentioned. It's really nice. Again, it's a very flattering look. Pinks and reds seem to be kind of my favorite shades to wear on my eyes. So my favorite outfits that I wore this year, I would say my first favorite, my main favorite would be the Halloween costume that I had this year, which was a pirate costume. It was a little bit almost like, I would say, trying to be historically accurate, if you will. Obviously not exactly, but you know, I had a tricorn and this kind of like toy gun, what do you call it, flintlock or something like that. And I had a blouse that was kind of vintage. It was supposed to look kind of like, it's a Lolita blouse, but it's kind of meant to look like a pirate blouse. Another outfit that I look back upon really fondly is the one where I was recreating the 50s looks from that movie that I was, La Bamba, I think it was. The looks of the main female lead in that movie, I really like them and I recreated them in a video. And one of them, I was wearing a long wine skirt that was kind of a pencil skirt and with a puff sleeve vest, kind of, well, it was a sweater, but you know, short sleeve sweater. And I really liked the look, and I wore something similar today. Well, I was wearing this except with that same skirt, and I really liked it. It does give a really like strong vintage vibe to the outfit, but I especially like the scarf tied on the ponytail. But it's really nice, and that wine skirt is actually much more flattering than I remembered it being before I made that video. I looked at it in kind of like with some skepticism even after I bought it, because I'm like, does that really look that good? But it doesn't really make my legs look shorter. It actually looks really nice and kind of elongates my figure a little bit. So other fashion items that I really like this year were my purple velvet dress that I wore in a couple of different videos, and I got it from Go Trendier, so it was secondhand, and I think it might be sort of a dupe or a reproduction of a Doll's Kill dress, or at least a dress from a Doll's Kill brand. And I don't really, I mean, they're not the best company of all time, so you know, I don't really mind that much. And also I didn't really support the counterfeit item, I would say, since I got it secondhand. But it's a really pretty dress. It also has this like playful but still gothic look, and you can definitely pair it with a lot of different things. What I like about strap dresses, you know, dresses that have just the straps, is that you can wear blouses underneath them, and like that really changes the look, and you basically make different outfits every time. Another one of my favorite items, you have probably noticed, is this necklace that has the kind of chain, that has a chain and the heart here. It's just so cute. I love wearing it. It goes really well with t-shirts, and that's something that I haven't found a lot. A lot of my necklaces don't really look that good with those like crew necks. Another one of my favorites is the pearl necklace that I got specifically for the 50s video that I mentioned, but I actually ended up really loving these. They're glass pearls, so you know, of course not real pearls, and they feel really nice. They have the knots between them and everything. And what I don't love is the clasp, because it kind of, at first it worked perfectly, but now every time I push it in back again, it comes undone again. See, I push it in and immediately it came undone. And I think maybe I will change the closure to be a regular clasp unless I find a way to fix this one, because of course this one looks much nicer than a regular clasp. So now I want to talk about some of my favorite things in terms of media, and first one that I want to mention is music and albums specifically. So this year Marina, formerly known as Marina and the Diamonds, came out with Ancient Dreams in a Modern Land, and the last album she had in 2019 was Love and Fear, and that one I initially really liked, and then the more I listened to it, the more I went, yeah, this is definitely not her best. In fact, among her albums, I would say that was probably the worst. I'm wearing the heart that she wore in Electro Heart era basically as a homage, right? Ancient Dreams is a much better album than Love and Fear. I know some people think it's her best. I still haven't, decided whether it's her best or not, but I really love it. Especially the first half. I like the second half, but it doesn't really have the uniqueness that the first 5 tracks have. And the kind of energy and confidence that those tracks have is just unmatched. So probably my most listened to album this year was Susie and the Banshees Nocturne. It's a live album really, and although I do love the studio versions of all the songs there, I think that the live versions, at least the ones in this album, are just far superior, except maybe for Night Shift. That might not be as good as the studio one, but everything else is just amazing music, just the best that songwriting has to offer. I guess I'm being kind of dramatic here, but I really do think so. They're just really dark, catchy songs that they don't get annoying at all. I mean, I have been listening to those same songs over and over for a while, years really, not as often as in the last couple years, but definitely in the last couple years they have been just constant favorites. Another album that is very very new to me, that for a lot of people is probably old news, is Everywhere at the End of Time, and you might know this as the Dementia album or Dementia albums. So the project is supposed to represent the different stages of dementia, and it's kind of scary at both at first glance and at second glance. I mean, really I see it as almost a horror project. There's just this really horrible feeling of like devastation, sorrow, confusion, mostly confusion. The first time that I listened to the albums, to the 6 stages, I think there are 6 stages, the first time I listened to the first and second stage, I was like, yeah, this is kind of boring. I want to get to the next stages that are more like chaotic and stuff. But truly, once I got to those stages, I really wished I had paid more attention in the first ones, because those were like the last remnants of anything cohesive and logical going on. Everything else is really, again, it's very depressing, because there's no really going back when you have something like dementia. You don't really get better. There's just things that you can do to prevent it from getting worse faster, but it's kind of a race against time. And I don't want to spoil it for you, but the last album is not only also very very depressing, but also a little bit hopeful. And when you really listen to it, to the 6 albums, you really find how much there is to. You really notice how much there is to find in those. In the awareness stages, you really notice things to find. Notice how there were things that maybe you didn't really pay attention to the first time around. Because maybe at first it sounds like just normal music, at least the first album, but yeah, that's definitely not the case. There's a lot of remembering past things, but remembering them differently or weirdly, and in a distorted way. And also it's very impressive because there's basically, I don't think there's any lyrics at any moment or any words aside from the ones that the titles of these songs have. Another album that I was really into this year was Paradise Lost Gothic. This one is one that I have liked before in previous years, but I never have gotten to the stage of like re-listening to the same songs in the album over and over. That is just something that I really did this year, that especially the first and last tracks. So the Painless, right, especially that one, it's kind of reminds me, I mean, you can see it's kind of a precursor of gothic metal, of course, but I think it's also very interesting because there's a few of those female vocals that make the kind of Beauty and the Beast cliche as it is known now, because it's been overdone by a lot of different bands that are now doing gothic metal and that have been doing it for a long time. It doesn't seem like they really have matched that same sound since then. And I do think they're, the albums that they made after that one are also really good, but they sound different. Well, some more than others anyway. And I really haven't, listened to any other doom metal albums, at least, that kind of give me that same type of Beauty and the Beast vocals, where the sopranos aren't overdone to the point of maybe being a little bit corny, I guess. Because I feel like the more recent, or not more recent, but the, I guess, modern versions of that kind of sound basically like Evanescence, but without the rapping. And I also really like The Gallery by Dark Tranquillity, which also does the same thing. Some of the songs have a few clean female vocals here and there. So if you haven't listened to Paradise Lost Gothic and you're a metalhead, and if you don't like doom metal that much or gothic metal that much, I think you should listen to it, because it really isn't the same as maybe what you have in your mind as like the image of gothic metal. And the same goes really for other stuff like Velvet Darkness, They Fear. And the songs that I have been listening to a lot, especially in the last few months, have included some from Senjutsu. This was actually gifted to me. My brother gifted it to me for Christmas this year. And of course it was this year, well, last year. And look at this, I mean, see, it has like the samurai whole samurai theme going on, the two CDs and the booklet here going on. So I do especially like my favorite. Oh my god, I was looking for the track list here, but on the back it actually has a different version of the cover. I would say my favorite songs are Stratego, Lost in a Lost World, and Death of the Celts. And initially, or at least in my review or my thoughts on that album, the video for that, I pointed to different ones when I talked about my favorite ones, but the more I re-listen to Stratego, the more I love it. And Lost in a Lost World does have a little bit of a flaw. There's a section in that song that I don't like as much. It doesn't sound good at all. When I listen to it, I have to like skip through it. I will have the timestamps here in the ones that I don't like, but the part that I don't like. But honestly, aside from that, the song is just beautiful and perfect. And if it wasn't for that section, it would probably be my favorite by far of the album. And Death of the Celts is just amazing. I mean, I don't know how there's people who don't like this song. Yeah, it's a bit long, but honestly, it doesn't feel nearly as long as it really is. I guess it could stand to be a little bit shorter, but I don't think it really overstays its welcome. Some songs that you might be surprised that I like are, one is Sarah Brand's American Gap Rap. This is a hyper pop song. It's very interesting, I guess. She made a video song and video called Red Dress, which kind of went viral for being the worst song ever made, as a lot of people called it. It sounds bad. I mean, on purpose, really, I would say. I think the jury is still out on whether it's on purpose or not. You can tell that she's almost like singing badly on purpose. She's singing off key. It's almost like it's meant to be like an ugly sounding song. And Red Dress does have a sort of a re-listening value, but I do prefer American Gap Rap. That one feels like it has a little bit more depth and almost more, I won't say that it's necessarily more purposefully bad, but there's a few moments that are so chaotic and almost noisy, even though it sounds like a pop song, that I don't know, there's something about that song that is just so addictive. Another one is A$AP Rocky's Praise the Lord, which is his most listened to song in Spotify. So that one, again, it just really wants you to listen to it over and over. Very catchy, and I don't know what to say. I mean, it's maybe not the kind of music that I usually listen to, but I like to try and find different types of music to listen to. And I think I ideally want to like really find stuff that I like in every genre, every major genre outside of rock, because I've always felt like a lot of my music taste is a little too I don't think you can being too rock based is a bad thing. But sometimes I feel like I'm kind of missing out on some other types of music. So I don't know if you have any recommendations for other types of music that you like, that you think are catchy or anything like that. Maybe, I don't know, give them to me down below. I think the exceptions for the rock thing are maybe like some types of trip hop and things like that. But honestly, pretty much all the music that I listen to is rock. So my last video was about the worst books that I read in 2021, and I couldn't really make a best version because I didn't read that many books throughout the year, and the ones that I read, most of them were not that great in my opinion. So I only have two to talk about for my best, and only one of them has 4 stars, and that's the highest rated, and that is Geek Love by Catherine Dunn. I made a full review on this book already. It does have a few flaws that I mentioned in that review, but honestly, not only is it well written, it's also very entertaining, very enjoyable. It's a little bit more on the, I guess, disturbing or transgressive side, but I don't think it's difficult to read at all. There's definitely some stuff to be aware of before you read it, but I think that it is pretty easy to read, especially if you want to get into those types of disturbing books. This is maybe easier to read than others. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know how to give you a... I mean, I've read other books that are considered to be disturbing. Beloved, for example, and that one has a very difficult writing style. So in case you don't know, it is about a family of circus people, and the parents basically make their children deformed deliberately by experimenting during the pregnancies, and they are able to have a few really odd children that it can use as like circus freaks, if you will. And the story is about the children. It's narrated by one of the children, which is the least gifted one, so the most, I guess, normal one, who is an albino hunchback. It's kind of a coming of age story, I guess. I mean, you see them as they grow up into adults. I don't want to give too much away, but it's really good. I just think it's really good. Another one that I really liked, mostly just in terms of enjoyment, although again I did find a few flaws with it, was Eyes of Silver, Eyes of Gold by Ellen O'Connell. That one, it's a romance, and I mostly read it, entertainment, enjoyment, but I was pretty impressed with it, given how bad some of the previous romances that I read have been. This one was pretty impressive. I think the author really tried her hardest to like keep away from cliches and tropes that have been overused, just overall to make an enjoyable and exciting romance novel. I also read Dancing on Coals by her, but that one is not as romance heavy. Even Eyes of Silver is like on the cusp, or like on the border, like a little too not very romancy. There's a lot of stuff that just kind of reads more like general historical fiction. And Dancing on Coals is also a Western romance, so it's kind of similar in the sense that, there's the Native American male love interest and the white female love interest, or, the main character. But Dancing on Coals is a little too... It's not as romance heavy. It's definitely about half of the book reads kind of like just regular historical fiction, and I mean, I read it for, the romance aspect, so, I was a little bit bummed about it, I guess. In terms of movies and TV, more westerns, because one of them is Longmire. So Longmire, I started watching it on 2020, but I finished watching it in 2021, and it's definitely a very entertaining, very, drama-filled, I guess. Not too melodramatic, but what I mean is that, it's very, it's pretty action-packed. A lot of like relationship / friendship drama kind of things, right? And like I said, it's a Western, but it's actually a modern, like it's set in the 2010s actually. And it's about this sheriff who is, trying to always be kind of morally spotless, although he kind of does fail a little bit in that, but he's obviously a flawed character just like the rest. Probably my favorite character, and generally a fan favorite, it seems, is played by Lou Diamond Phillips. He plays Henry Standing Bear, and he's my favorite character. I think he's also really sort of a morally driven character, just like the main character, but I think that he's maybe a bit more likable than the main character, than the sheriff. And they're actually friends with each other, but I feel like maybe the main character is a little bit of a Gary Stu in comparison to Henry, who is a bit more maybe flawed at times, but definitely not to the point of being like morally ambiguous or anything. Like, he's pretty not spotless, but he's very much on the right side the whole time throughout the series, and it's sometimes easy to, I just find it much easier sometimes to root for him as opposed to the main character. And I ended up really liking the actor himself, Lou Diamond Phillips, as I mentioned, and I ended up watching a lot of movies, or a few movies, just because he was in them, or he had a big role in them. I watched Young Guns from 1988, Stand and Deliver, I think from the same year actually, and I liked both of them a lot. La Bamba, which I mentioned previously, and The Night Stalker, which is a bit more recent. It's about the serial killer Richard Ramirez, who is played by him, and it's actually pretty interesting to see him as a villain in the story, because usually, or at least in the most of the movies that I have seen him, he plays a more kind of a character more like Henry, who is more of a good guy, but he's very interesting in those villain roles as well. They usually have him play like a Mexican or a Native American, usually in movies or shows, although he's actually a Filipino. And he's become kind of among my favorite actors, just because he's kind of cute. I like him, and honestly sometimes I just watch things or listen to things because I think the person behind them is like cute or attractive, like A$AP Rocky as well. I was like, oh, that guy is pretty hot, let's like check out whatever he made. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I guess that's normal, isn't it? Tell me this. So the last category is games, specifically dating sims. And so with Ikesen, I'm currently reading the KG, main story of KG. I'm not enjoying it that much, to be honest. But I read the Motonari one also this year, and I really loved it. His character is a pirate, which is part of the reason why I liked it. I'm really into pirates. I've been reading like historical romance about pirates and stuff like that. His character is really like rebellious and maybe a little bit cold-hearted, but also not like extremely aggressive, not overly aggressive, not too much of an asshole. Maybe a few times at the beginning of the story, but honestly not that much. And the story is honestly really cool from the beginning because of the whole time travel aspect. It really adds a lot of things to the world building, because there's this other character who wants to erase the future where the main character comes from. Another one that I really liked is Voltage from Love 365, or Voltage. The character Jacob, who I think only has one main story and an epilogue, unfortunately, but he's from Be My Princess 2, and he's from a nation that is basically supposed to be Russia. And he's, again, I guess that's the kind of character I like, that he's a little bit on the cold side, but also not outright aggressive, and not too overly dominant, like not too much of an alpha kind of character. And he's really fairly respectful pretty much throughout the whole story, even though he's not necessarily being very affectionate the whole story, because of course he hasn't fallen in love yet. And it's one of those stories where both the characters and the romance and the plot going on in the background are really, really interesting. So those are my yearly favorites, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me what you think down below, and I'll see you in the next one.